Mist sat low on the water, and the river here bent in a wide, unhurried arc, its banks heavy with dew. Everything was green in the particular way early summer makes things green. Almost too much, almost aching. A single gray heron stood motionless in the shallows. It did not move when Kaito approached. It simply watched him the way old things watch young ones, without urgency. Kaito knelt at the river's edge, cupping water in both hands and holding it there a moment before drinking. His reflection looked back at him, older than it should have been, with a smudge of charcoal on his jaw from last night's work. His kimono, the plain indigo one he had arrived in, now carried a sewn patch on the left shoulder in lighter cloth. Someone else's stitchwork. Saya's, probably, though she had never said so. 4 months. That was how long it had been since the cart dropped him at the edge of the empire and turned back without waiting for him to find his footing. 4 months since he slept on stone because there was nothing softer. 4 months since the name Kaito meant nothing to anyone. Not a family, not a rank, not a reason to be trusted. He had started to think that might have been a gift, a terrible one. But still. The heron lifted then, gone in a single silent wingbeat, and Kaito watched the space it left behind. The clearing had changed. 3 months ago it had been just a fire ring and a prayer. Now there were the beginnings of walls, not grand, not straight, but real. Rough timber frames notched and fitted in the old post and beam style. The kind that did not need iron nails because the joints held each other. 2 structures were roofed with layered river reed. A third still stood open to the sky, its skeleton casting long shadows across packed earth. Smoke rose from a cooking pit, carrying the smell of miso and rice. Not enough rice. It was stretched with wild grain again, but the smell was the same, and smell is memory, and memory was enough. Sora was already at the makeshift forge. He was 16 and built like he had been assembled from spare parts. Arms too long, shoulders still catching up. But at the anvil he went quiet and sure in a way he never managed anywhere else. He was reforging a cracked adze head, his face sheened with early sweat, working with the concentration of a monk copying sutras. "You went to the river again," he said, without looking up. "How do you know?" Kaito asked. "Your sandals. The left one squeaks when it's wet." Kaito looked down at his sandal. He hadn't noticed. "I'll fix that," he murmured. "You say that every time," Sora replied. Sora turned the adze head in the coals. Kaito watched the forge, the small, steady breath of it. There was something he wanted to say. He did not say it yet. The oldest structure in the clearing had a low ceiling and dark wood, and it smelled of pine resin and dried herbs bundled in the beams like sleeping bats. Oji-san sat cross-legged on a worn zabuton, a cup of tea between his palms. He was not doing anything else, just holding the tea, just being in the room with it. Kaito slid open the shoji panel, repaired now with oiled paper from Kenji's last supply run, and stepped inside to sit across from the old man without being invited, because by now he did not need to be. "Kenji's late," Kaito said. "Merchants are always late," Oji-san answered. "It means they found something worth being late for." "Or something went wrong," the old man paused. "Yes, or that." The fire popped once into the silence. Oji-san offered Kaito the cup. He took it, drank, and handed it back. This was not something they had arranged. It had simply become the way mornings worked between them. "You're thinking about the northern road again," the old man observed. "I'm thinking about winter," Kaito said. "We don't have enough stored. We don't have enough anything. If Kenji doesn't come back with the salt and the seed stock, then we solve that problem when it arrives." "I'd rather solve it before it arrives," Kaito said quietly, not arguing. Oshi-san looked at him over the cup. "You know what I like about you, boy?" Kaito waited. "You worry like someone who already belongs here." Kaito's face did something small and complicated. He looked at his hands and set them flat on his knees. By midday the sun was high and hard, the air thick with cut wood and river clay. 2 new arrivals were helping Saya raise a wall section. A brother and sister, the Mori siblings, who had walked in from the eastern pass 3 days earlier, with nothing but a handcart and an expression that said they had been turned away from too many places to bother pretending anymore. They had not committed to staying. They were watching, deciding. Saya directed them with the efficient authority of someone who had learned to give orders because no one else was going to. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. "Higher on the left. Yes, hold it," she instructed. The wall section seated into its notch with a heavy, satisfying thunk. The sister, Hana, maybe 20, let out a breath and looked at the frame as though surprised it had worked. "It actually fits," she said. "They usually do," Saya answered dryly. if you cut them right. The brother, Ren, was quieter. He ran his hand along the joint. He was a carpenter, or had been one before whatever happened to them happened. You could tell by the way he touched the wood like it was a conversation. Post and beam, old northern style, he said. Who taught you this? Saya let a pause carry its own weight. My clan. Ren did not ask about the clan. He had heard a tone like that before. He simply nodded and picked up the next piece. That was when it happened. Kaito was on the roof of the second structure, relaying reed bundles to Sora when the beam shifted, not catastrophically, not dramatically. Just a single support post, set 3 weeks earlier in ground that had turned out to be softer than it looked, tilting a slow, inevitable degree too far. The sound was a groan, then a crack. Then the east wall of the second structure folded inward in a cascade of timber and reed, taking 4 weeks of work and a full third of their winter shelter with it. Dust. Silence. Everyone stared. Kaito stood on what was left of the roof section, still holding a bundle of reeds, looking at the collapse. His face did not do anything dramatic. That was almost worse. He simply looked at it for a long time with the expression of someone calculating very quietly exactly how bad this was. Kaito, Sora called from below, his voice tight. Are you? I'm fine, he said. He climbed down carefully and stood before the collapsed wall, putting his hand on the fallen post, the one that had failed, feeling where the base had softened. Saya was beside him. She said nothing. She offered no comfort, and she did not minimize it. She just stood there, close enough that he knew she was there. I should have tested the ground deeper, he said quietly. I knew that section sat lower. You knew a lot of things and you did most of them right, she answered. Most isn't. No, it isn't. She let a beat fall. So we rebuild it. She said it like it was a small thing. It was not a small thing and she knew it, but she said it that way anyway because that was what the moment needed. And she had learned, reluctantly, slowly, that Kaito tended to carry things until he buckled under them, and she had decided without ever saying so that that was not going to happen. By late afternoon, the light came in long and amber, cutting through the pines at a low angle and turning the dust of the road to something almost golden. It would have been beautiful if you weren't tired. Kenji arrived not from the south, where they expected him, but from the north, from the mountain road. He was on foot, the cart gone, walking with a slight hitch in his gait and a canvas pack too full, his expression somewhere between sheepish and unsettled. He saw the collapsed wall before he saw Kaito, and he saw Kaito before he said anything. Bad day? He ventured. Moderate, Kaito replied. Where's the cart? Kenji set down his pack carefully. I want to preface this by saying I got almost everything on the list. Kenji. The cart is fine. The cart is just currently north of here. Saya appeared behind Kaito then, with the particular silence she reserved for moments when she had been right about something. You went to the mountain road, she said. I heard there was a trading post, Kenji offered. New one, above the carved pass. That road leads to the Demon Kingdom, Kaito said. It does, yes. Kenji pulled out a bundle wrapped in dark cloth and set it down, unwrapping it with a theatrical care that suggested he was nervous about the reaction. They sent a gift. Inside the cloth lay a small ceramic jar, sealed with wax impressed with a character none of them recognized. Beside it, a folded square of paper, and beside that, a single iron nail, impossibly precise, the kind of craft that took a forge generations to master. Kaito picked up the nail and turned it in the fading light, then looked at Sora, who looked back at him with wide eyes. Did you speak to them? Kaito asked. A trader, at the edge of the pass, Kenji said. He didn't cross fully, just stood at the boundary stone. He said... He paused, choosing his words carefully. He said they've been watching the smoke from the clearing for 2 months. He said the word they use for what you're building. What word? Rakuen, Kenji answered quietly. No one moved. The amber light held for one more long moment, and then it went, and the sky turned the deep ink blue of a summer evening at the edge of the world. Kaito stood holding the nail. He did not look triumphant. He did not look afraid. He looked like a man who had just understood that something larger than him had noticed he existed, and was choosing for now to be gentle about it. Behind him, the collapsed wall sat in the dusk, waiting to be rebuilt. He closed his hand around the nail. Rakuen, paradise. A word the Empire used for a place you could only arrive at after death. He was 18 years old and exiled and standing in the wreckage of a wall he had built wrong, and somewhere in the mountains, in a kingdom that was supposed to be his enemy, someone had looked at his smoke and called it that. He did not know yet whether that was a promise or a warning. He did not know yet what it would cost. He just stood there. And for the first time in 4 months, he let himself want it. The fire, rebuilt now at the center of the clearing, caught and held. Far off, the mountains stood in silhouette, dark, jagged, and very distant. A single light glimmered in the carved pass. There, and then not there.